So, good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to Sound of Music's digital lunchtime new music labs. My name is Safi, and I'm a member of the Sound of Music Youth Advisory Group for New Voices. And for anyone who doesn't know, Sound of Music is a national organisation that supports the creation and enjoyment of new music. And in 2021, following on from the first ever series of masterclasses in 2020, the New Music Labs are a new series of free virtual labs with a bit of a twist, where each of these interactive lab sessions have been created with and will be delivered by one of us, the young people from the Youth Advisory Group. And we brought together some of the most exciting and wonderful professional composers and music creators and producers to share their experiences. In order to sort of inspire as many young people as possible, roughly age 13 to 19, like us, to enjoy making new music at whatever stage they're at. And the idea is that anyone who's already creating their own music is given the inspiration and the skills that they might need to keep going and move forward and make brand new things. And to anyone who's never tried or really wants to, just to really encourage them to give it a go and really give a warm welcome to this world, because I think it's amazing. And so the New Music Labs aim to provide all of these things, and introducing us to the creative industry through expert advice, and giving a taster of how these kind of things are approached and how to approach music creation. So I'm really excited to be joined by Carlos Eine. And today we're going to sort of go into the world of home production, online content creation, using some Q&A style things. Bit of talk from me, quite a lot of talk from Carlos, just to really get stuck in. So yeah, I'm sure that you know the work of Carlos, but he's an American Filipino multi-instrumentalist and online content creator, known for producing jazz arrangements of video game music for his YouTube channel, insaneintherainmusic, which is amazing. I just want to quickly say my favorite is the Coconut Mall arrangement. I do have that on my main playlist, and it is repeated every day nearly. Yeah, so I'd also like to introduce you to Aisha Koklu from the education team at Sound of Music, who will be joining our session and will be helping guide us through and sort of be there for the Q&A at the end. So just before we get started, just a quick kind of bit of housekeeping. The chat function will be available throughout, so you can post your questions to the artist. And if you have an unstable connection, you might find it improves if you switch off video in Zoom. I'm not sure if they're switched on, but that might help just in case. But yeah, so that's enough for me. So I'm gonna hand over to Carlos.
Hello. Hello. I find it funny that it's always funny speaking at some sort of panel where it's claimed to offer expert advice because I feel like I don't think anybody truly has expert advice to give. They only have the advice that they've learned in their what's it called? They only have the advice that they've learned on their learn it as you go kind of thing. Or that's how I've been. I just want to preface this whole thing in saying, like, I'm very happy to be here, and also say that anything that I say is just how I figured it out and what worked for me. But this might be completely not relevant or completely different for you, and that's totally fine. So, would you like a short little description about who I am and just talking about my history? Sure. So my name's Carlos, as Safi graciously introduced. I have been making video game jazz arrangements on YouTube since September of 2012. So it's been, I think I'm in my 9th year of doing it, which for anything on the internet is a long time to be doing something. It's probably the most significant thing I've ever done in my life is somehow stumbling upon this community of people taking video game music and arranging them and performing it on YouTube, and it's been a ton of fun. I grew up I'm from Seattle, Washington, over here in the good old United US of A. I grew up as a kid in public school music programs. I studied clarinet in elementary school and picked up saxophone in middle school and in high school. Played in my school's jazz band, and just really enjoyed pursuing music because it was fun. I mean, there's not really much more justification than that. It was just really fun to do, and eventually I stumbled upon video game music after playing a bunch of video games as a kid, and realized that, oh wait, there's like this video game music is just like the other music. Like there's actual like there's sheet music, there are notes, I can play the notes and it sounds the same. And I thought that was so cool. And so I took those two passions of mine and put them together, and here we are making video game jazz arrangements on YouTube. All right. Is am I waiting for some? Are there some questions that are going to be happening? I wasn't sure if there's any more. If you wanted any more description.
Yeah, no. Well, I think I can start off with a question. I mean, if anyone does have a question, they can post it in the chat, and we can sort of read them out and go for it. But yeah. Well, my first question, not necessarily musical, but what if you had to choose? What's your favorite video game, or at least video game soundtrack?
So those are very different questions, I think.
Yeah, I realize.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's totally okay. So the for me, I'll start with the soundtracks. So my favorite, I have two favorite game soundtracks, and they're sort of separated by different eras in my life, I guess. As a child, and by child I mean like up until like my high school years, my favorite soundtrack was Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. Or that from Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. I liked it so much because I really enjoyed the Pokemon games, and I spent like a lot of time playing Pokemon when I was a kid. And Pokemon Diamond and Pearl came out at a time when I think my music taste was especially malleable. Like I think when people are your music tastes are like formed when you're like between like 13 and 15, I think. Sometime in that time range is when you like the music you listen to then is what usually ends up turning into, you know, your main musical influences. And for me at that time, that was the soundtrack I was listening to, because it took the styles of Pokemon composition that I loved and incorporated jazz elements into it, which I didn't really realize at the time, but looking back on it, there's a whole lot of, you know, there was so much influence there. So Pokemon Diamond and Pearl is my favorite childhood soundtrack. And now that I'm just a little bit older, my favorite soundtrack is Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Which is a recent JRPG put out by Nintendo and Monolith Soft, and I am a sucker for games with really, really deep and really deep stories. And the Xenoblade series, both Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2, have such like amazing stories that work so well with the music together. And that's one of the best things about video game music too, is that I like it so much, not necessarily because the compositions are like objectively better in some way. I think it's because the music exists alongside a story, and that bond between those two things is so strong, and they're so interconnected that when you listen to the music, you can't help but think of the time in the story when this thing happened, and vice versa. You can't help but not think of the music. And I think that context just makes the music so much better. It's like usually like if you have a piece of music you like, you can also probably remember some other time in your life when you were listening to it and something happened at the same time. And that's just the same thing with video game music, but at a whole like with a story that's not necessarily real. I mean, it's like it's a video game, right? I guess if it's a nonfiction video game, that's different. But the story and the context is what makes the music so great, along with the music itself.
We have a question from, actually a couple of questions from the audience. Safi, can I just quickly jump in as there's a relevant one? So Carlos, could you tell us a bit about how to arrange the video game music? How do you figure out how it translates into jazz genre? And I know that we are looking at where you also make your music. So if there's a chance to show and tell a bit, I'm sure that would be really welcome too.
Sure. So this is this one from Judith, right?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, Judith. Thank you for the question. So the strange thing is, I don't. My thought about genre is that genre is more of a tool for helping other people understand music. Like if I've created something and I want somebody else to be able to understand what I've made in a fairly succinct way, then I think genre is useful there. Like I can tell someone, oh, this is like a jazz thing or this is a funk thing. But when I'm arranging something, I'm almost not ever thinking about how do I make this jazz? Like, how do I make this fit inside this box? And that probably sounds a little strange to hear, but it's more it's a little more nuanced than that. For me, it more so feels like more of a general, like, how would I present this piece in the best light possible? Like, not everything needs to fit into the jazz genre. It just so happens that I've been experienced with jazz the most, so most of my arranging is fueled by my experience with that. But it's not like jazz is, you know, everything has to be jazz for it to be good. No, it's not true. So typically, just to briefly go over the process, usually it starts the part that I can't really explain is the creative spark at the beginning, which is really what fuels everything else. Like, it typically happens when I'm doing something very boring, like I'm on a walk, or I'm cleaning something, or I'm doing the dishes, and I just have an idea in my head. Sometimes it might be for a song that I've been listening to recently, whether it's a video game song or a jazz tune that I've been listening to recently, and I think, oh, what would these two sound like together? And you can't force that very special creative moment when those two things combine. But when that happens, that's the spark. That starts off everything. From there, it's a very technical process afterwards, and the technical process is designed to just get the idea out of your head and into a tangible form, right? Because an idea in your head is just an idea. It doesn't quite exist yet. That's the exciting thing about being a creator, is that you have the unique chance to make something that is just entirely not real in your head and make it real through just powers of, you know, effort and coordination and logistics, and that's super cool with me. So usually it comes out like that, and then I'll have the idea, then I'll translate it into some sort of like text form. Like, I'll write out the thing, like I don't know, piano intro, saxophone comes in with the melody, strings playing a G flat major chord and second inversion on the top, with drums playing a ECM ride cymbal pattern beneath. Like, that's just like a very brief text description. Then it usually goes into I go into sheet music, and then I record the parts, and I have a whole explanation of it on a video I've made, but that's just a general overview. If you want a deeper explanation, check out my studio tour video, and it's somewhere like an hour and 20 minutes in. I have a whole section dedicated to this. So if you want a more thorough answer, go see that. Oh man.
Cool. So, I mean, if that's all right, there are a couple more questions which I think would be really interesting. So I think the really good one from Malachi, I think, is one that I was going to ask as well. So how do you deal with being your own worst critic?
All right. This is a great question, and it underscores something that I think is something that isn't spoken about as much in the world of the professional world, and that there's the outer battle of like getting good at your instrument, making something, time management, you know, things that exist outside of you, things that you do to the outside world, right? Those are a certain bucket of challenges, shall we say. But there's a whole other bucket of challenges that happen inside your head, and that bucket is the really hard bucket to deal with, especially if you're someone like me who tends to think a lot and think about your own actions a lot and constantly go in cycles. And that's the real challenge. And I think learning to recognize that and combat that is very, very important, especially for an artist. So it's as a musician, it's extremely easy to be overly self-critical, and it's understandable to a point, right? Because you're trying to make the best things you possibly can, and you want to hold yourself to a high standard to be able to achieve that. But the problem with that is that there's often a difference between the music that you hear in your head and the music you're able to create. So I call this the taste gap. When your taste in music is like, I want to sound like Led Zeppelin, right? And then you pull out your Squire guitar and your Line 6 Spider amp and you play, and like, this sounds nothing like Led Zeppelin, and so you're understandably frustrated. But you have to realize that it just takes time and repetitions and just going through the process over and over again. So above all, learn to be patient with yourself, and instead of focusing on the goal or where you want to go, just focus on, the journey. Focus on one thing at a time, the next thing you're going to make, like the one thing right in front of you. Because that's all you can do, right? That you like, the future doesn't actually exist, nor does the past. The past does not actually exist. I mean, it kind of does. It did exist, but the future doesn't exist. It's a construct you've made up in your head. So all you can do is control what you do now, and then the future will probably turn out. It might turn out in a way you want. It might not. But all you can do is just focus on the next thing. Focus on what's like the next step right in front of you, and give yourself some time and be nice to yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Well, so just, I'll kind of lead a bit of discussion, some questions I had, and we'll open the floor up a little bit later. But one of the main things I think I was going to ask is, how do you find balancing home recording and sort of content creation with kind of playing live and playing with other people?
Mm-hmm.
And sort of, do you have a preference? Sort of, are you someone who really likes working by yourself, or do you think you enjoy working more with other people?
Mm-hmm. It's a different balance for every person, I think. Some musicians really, really enjoy playing live all the time. That's their bread and butter. Like, they can't live without it. And I don't think I am one of them. Like, I'm very much fine with just being here and playing everything, or most things myself. It does get a little, it can get lonely sometimes, but I do have, I do make a point to get out sometimes and collaborate with people when I can. But I think as long as you are, I think you first, like, figure out which of the two or where along that spectrum you are. Like, are you the kind of person who wants to create at home in relative isolation by yourself for long periods of time? Does that work for you? Or are you the kind of person who like really, really wants to play with other people all the time? And that's the first step, figuring out where you are along that spectrum. And then once you figured it out, don't be tempted to do the other one just because somebody else is doing that. Like, I went through that recently where I was I felt so compelled to be like, I gotta go to all the sessions, I gotta go play with all the people, meet everybody. And then I realized that I wasn't actually happy doing any of that, and that I was missing out on, just hanging out down here in the basement recording a video game cover. Like, I missed that. And I think that was me getting caught up in what other people, what another person's idea of being a musician or living a good life means, right? That's the question for you to answer, not a question for somebody else to answer. You can certainly take inspiration from other people's answers, but at the end of the day, like, you have to figure out what drives you and what you enjoy. And once you figure that out, just do that, and then I think you'll have a much more fulfilling experience.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think so that kind of ties in with, cliche, but the pandemic.
Mhm.
And sort of, how could you like talk a little bit about maybe how that affected you, and whether it kind of, did it weaken you in some areas? Did it strengthen you? Obviously, kind of being, well, stuck inside, I guess.
Well, I learned how to play the trumpet during the pandemic. I was like, I learned how to play. It was like, I realized, man, we're gonna have so much time inside, and I'm not gonna go anywhere. I might as well just get a new instrument and just learn that one. And and that was one benefit. And certainly the pandemic has not been easy. I think for me personally and for others, it kind of, on a personal level, like, it revealed like the anxiety issues that became highlighted when there's suddenly a virus that's invisible and is going to kill you, and then, like, you just think about that, and it can make you spiral, which is certainly difficult, and I know lots of people struggle with that. So it's important to acknowledge and speak about. so that on a personal level, that was probably the biggest thing. Musically, I was pretty much fine. I was working on a project called Cinovation at the time, where I was finishing this album of music from Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. I had started that project before the pandemic, and then as the pandemic started, I was like, you know what, we'll just keep going. We'll just finish it. And it was a good like anchor to keep me grounded. But on a societal level, I think the changes were more interesting in that the pandemic has really revealed a lot of the inequity in society that we knew was there. And it just, we knew was there, but I don't think there could have been a better thing to just see all of it like right in front of you, which is certainly a shame for people who are in situations that are not as great. But like seeing that and acknowledging that is, is the first step to improving it. Right. So I think the pandemic it caused a lot of hardship, but also somewhat useful on like shining a light on that part of society. And, there are different ways to address that. And for me, as being an artist, I think my way of addressing it was it sort of gave me like an understanding of like the purpose of being an artist, which is sort of kind of counterintuitive, because I think art is inherently kind of useless. Like there's not really like any objective value, I think, to a Coconut Mall jazz cover. Like it's hard to assign like a dollar value to that, which is fine. But I think one, it provides entertainment, which is nice and a good distraction for people. It makes people happy listening to. It helps sustain them through all these, these negative things that we've been enduring. But I think also it can, how do I say this? Like the philosophy of creating art can be useful as applied to real world situations. And I say that as in it's I haven't fully understood this, but it's kind of a big meta idea of like, when you're creating art, you're doing something because it makes you happy, not because of any dollar incentive, not because of any financial incentive, usually. Like, there's maybe a balance, but usually it's because of some fulfillment thing. And I think the more we can inspire people to pursue things for their own fulfillment, rather than chasing money to buy things that they don't really want, that they don't really need, I think that's at least somewhat useful. So I feel it's made me feel better and understand my place in society as a result of this whole thing.
Yeah, thank you. And something that also came out of the pandemic was so I feel like more online collaboration between artists.
Yeah.
And I know, you did your big collaboration project. How did you sort of find that? Did you?
Yeah. So I, in a weird way, it felt like nothing really changed with the pandemic. I mean, with online collaboration, because I've been doing that way before. Like, people were like, "How do I make these cool split screen videos?" And I'm like, "Dude, I've been doing that for the past like 7 years. Like, I've gotcha." But I did a couple of, well, the biggest one I was a part of was this big video with the 8-Bit Big Band, where they arranged Lifelight from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and performed it with like this, and set out like an open call to musicians to get people to submit their parts. And I didn't submit because I had a whole bunch of other stuff going on during the time. But the spirit of that collaboration is something I've also done. I did one for my KK Cruisin' video where I got a bunch of people to sing and clap along to KK Slider from Animal Crossing, which is pretty fun. And those projects are the hardest part is just managing them logistically. Like, you have to look ahead and see, like, okay, where are the problems going to be? Someone's gonna send their video and it's gonna be out of sync. So how do I engineer the project so this is the least likely to happen? And that's sort of a fun puzzle to solve, because you envision all these problems and you figure out, how do I preemptively solve them? It's fun. It's certainly not the same thing as, playing with people together in person or having like a live audience at shows. But at the very least, I think the pandemic has helped people understand that you can create collaborative stuff online together, not necessarily with the same energy, but you can do it, and it just takes a different set of skills and awareness of the different pieces of technology you have at your disposal.
Yeah, Thank you. And kind of slightly moving into a kind of slightly different realm, but
Mhm.
I think one thing, kind of what we talked about earlier about being a self-critic. How
Mhm.
do you personally feel when you like watching your old videos, listening to your old videos? What I mean, because some people might call it a cringe fest when they look at their own stuff in the past. I mean, I certainly do. I can't go through my old GarageBand files. So yeah, but
Whoa.
so I know. But how do you sort of feel when you look at your old stuff? Is it, are you more appreciative? Are you proud? Or are you just like, get this off, get this away?
It depends. It really depends on which specific project. Some of them have held up really well over time. I actually like sometimes listen to my own songs, like just like unironically. Like sometimes I do, but not very frequently. Um, but like above all, like the number one thing I would say is that I'm glad I did it because that helped me in some way get to where I am now. Right. Like regardless of how good it is, like the fact that you did it is enough. Like the fact that it exists it is a tangible thing, and I guess tangible and recorded. It is a recorded thing. And you did it, and doing that contributed some level, some experience or some set of skills you gained from doing that helped you become where you are now, which I think is tremendous, and that's like the best you can ask for from any project. There are some old videos that I would like cringe at, admittedly, but not all of them. And I think it's okay to cringe at your old self, right? Because that means you've changed and improved just a little bit. I don't think you necessarily need to hide it from the internet. Like some people will look back at their cringe videos and say, "Oh, I gotta private this. I gotta private this," and that's a personal decision. I prefer to leave it public so people can see how far you've come. It's kind of funny. But yeah, I don't mind it too much. It's everybody like looks back at themselves and like, oh, why did I do that? But that just means you've learned and grown, which is all we can ask for.
Yeah, and I think one of my absolute favorites of yours was your version of Megalovania. I just love it, and all of the sort of rhythmic change and just, I know, that vibe. And I kind of wanted to ask a little bit, maybe how do you, so just how does something like, how does that happen? So from kind of, you got like an 8-bit sounding, a wonderful soundtrack. Undertale is one of my favorite games, obviously, but just how do you kind of come up with the ways you're going to vary a piece, or how do you sort of go about taking the main ideas and just sort of completely like revolutionizing them?
So with Megalovania, it's a very specific example because I actually personally, if I arranged that now, I would do it completely differently than the way I did it back then. Because like I honestly don't like the arrangement I did, but because if other people like it, totally fine. That's totally fine. I'm glad you enjoy it, but for me personally, it's not one of my favorites. But to explain how something like that happens, I think when you listen to a piece of music, I think it enters what I call your mental orchestra. Like every piece of music you listen to goes in there somehow. The ones that you listen to more frequently and with more intensity get like a bigger spot. Like there's more of that influence in there, and I think that's where like your creative juices kind of live. Like I am just imagining like this big symphony hall, right, with a whole bunch of different musicians just like stuffed inside. Like there's like a corner with like John Legend over here, a big snarky puppies circle over here, some Earth, Wind and Fire over there, Stevie Wonder here, Michael Jackson there, right? Like they're all just in this hall together, right? And then sometimes and then there's also like the video game songs that you listen to, or like for me, or just songs I listen to. So like the whole Chrono Trigger soundtrack is in there somewhere. The Pokemon soundtracks are in there somewhere. And then sometimes those two things, they're just walking around. It's like a big party, and then they meet each other, and then they're like, "Hi, Pokemon. My name's Stevie Wonder. Nice to meet you." Like imagine that. And then they just kind of talk. Like they talk to each other, and then this idea is born, which comes from the combination of the two things that they like the most. And this is a really big analogy to say that I think creativity comes from the combination of things that you have already experienced in a way that is unique to you. And that's beautiful because everybody experiences these things differently. Like when you listen to like what you may like or glean from listening to Overjoyed by Stevie Wonder is perhaps different than what I would like or glean from it. And those different things live in your brain differently. And then those different elements combine differently in different people, which is so cool because like, you know, different people have it's hard to predict exactly how they're going to work together. But I think that's so cool, and it leaves so much room for originality in that just like these two ideas combine and you don't know how it's going to work, but everybody does it differently, and it's cool. That's how it goes. I can't really explain it, but that's the best part.
Yeah. And I think in that sort of massive concert hall that you described, which I'm sure we'd all love to go to, do you sort of find yourself getting overwhelmed at times with sort of too many ideas and you're trying to kind of narrow them down because, you know, it's such like a huge, well, there's infinite possibilities, as you say.
You know, not as much. I think that can happen if you try and do it on purpose. Like if you show up to this, to go back to the analogy, if you show up at this concert hall and you're friends with Stevie Wonder and you're like, bro, you gotta meet Pokemon over there. They're my best friend and I really want you to meet them, but they're really busy, right? And you know, like sometimes when it just like it doesn't work as well when the connection isn't organic, and like Stevie shows up the Pokemon's like, hey, what's going on? Like shakes their hand, and that's as far as they get, right? They don't do anything else. But the real stuff happens when they're both just walking around and they happen to bump into each other, and that's where the cool stuff happens. So I think that's kind of explains writer's block in a way. Is like when writer's block is when you try to make those two things meet yourself, and it can work sometimes, but usually it's not as prolific. I would say it's not as cool of an interaction that happens. Your question was about getting overwhelmed with ideas, right? And another important thing is having some sort of journal or like system you can write things down in, specifically as a way to get the ideas out of your head and into a fixed medium as soon as possible. Because the brain, in my experience, is really good at generating ideas and keeping long-term memories. That's what it's really, really good at. It's not as good at keeping short-term things. Like, I'd have to think pretty hard to tell you what my dinner was last night or my lunch last night. I don't remember that. So if you have an idea, then I think getting it out of your head by writing it down, like kind of like frees up your RAM in your head for a new generation, something like that. And for sometimes that's like in the form of like writing it down, like in a text document, or like you pull up your voice memos on your phone or your whatever, and you play it into there. As long as it's like recorded somewhere, then you can be like, okay, I don't have to remember that anymore. So then you're free to generate more ideas. And again, that's what worked for me. If you're some sort of freak who can remember all that stuff, and if you are, then you're pretty cool. I wish I had that, but not me.
Yeah. So when you kind of look at that sort of log of ideas that you have, or kind of wherever they may be jotted down, and you kind of think, okay, I'm going to turn this into a project. How do you go about that? Like, so I've seen in the chat bits about time management. So what are your sort of cornerstones about managing projects?
Okay. First off, don't do everything. Like you can't, like people say I have really good time management skills, and I'm not so sure that that's entirely the truth. I think it's more so that my life is set up in a way that makes it really easy to finish everything. Because if I was still a college student and also going to like parties and jams and all that stuff, that's so much on your plate. And if you do all that, you're just going to be tired by the time you're done. And to do that and also, like create things that are at a relatively high frequency is asking a lot of yourself. And maybe some people can do it, but for everybody, there's like a ceiling. There's like a definite ceiling where you can't do too much. So rather than like start with making your life easier. Start with like changing your circumstances, or setting up your circumstances in a way that makes it easy for you. Beyond that, once you've done that part and then you have all the time at your disposal, for me it just comes naturally because I'm so like excited to see what the final product of this thing is going to be that like I can't not work on it. Which I think is maybe a good and bad problem to have, because like I will legit like walk around the house with my iPad listening to the latest mix of the song I was working on loop, just like over and over again, and then I hear like, you know what, that snare drum is like a dB too loud. Let me go back to the computer, render out a new mix, and do it all over again. Like that's how I am. And again, that's just me. But instead of like trying to discipline yourself so hard, which I think is maybe a little bit important, I think it's more productive to just be like, how do I make this thing I want to do as easy as possible for me to achieve, and how do I make it so that it's inevitable that it will happen. Like for me, when I start on a song, it's like if I like it so much, it's like I'm inevitably going to finish this because it's so much fun. Apart from that, though, I have a Google Calendar system that I use, especially if I'm planning around like fixed things, like if I have a thing I have to go to, or if there's a day that's particularly busy, then I'll probably like write it. Like I'll create little blocks of time to do certain things, and that was really important for me in college because of like classes being like like 2 hours here, then 2 hours there, and you have this amount of time in the middle. So making use of those little pockets of time is important. But as I've gone past that and now have most control over my time in my life, then I don't use it as much. But if you're strapped for time and you want to make time boxes, then I think setting your like having a calendar system and then writing down like what you think you'd like, something that you think, setting an intention for yourself. Like if I have a calendar block that says 9 to 11 arrange this thing, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to start right at 9 and end right at 11. It means that like I'm intending on using this section of my day for this purpose probably. And if you change, then great. If you change and you get it done, great. If something else happens, then great. It's just your life. Yeah, that's how I do it.
Cool. So kind of to focus on the home production side of things, I think in particular, or kind of self-doing things. A big question, or at least something I'm sort of battling with, is how have you gotten into or felt comfortable with working with software? Like, were you taught? Was it like trial and error? Was it a combination of all things? So I think lots of young people these days find it quite difficult to kind of get into learning software, and I think that's what stops a lot of people from getting their ideas kind of out there. And I was just wondering how, especially as you started sort of young, how you found working with all of that.
For me, it was like I've always been interested in like I was the Legos kind of kid. I've been interested in like tinkering with things, and for me, like a piece of software is kind of just like another toy to tinker with sometimes. And I don't think I've really ever taken like the only class I can think I've taken. Well, I did take some classes in how to use DAWs. DAWs is short for digital audio workstation. I took some of those classes in college, but those weren't the main thing that taught me. It was more so that like I knew what I wanted to make. Like I knew I wanted to make these videos, or like I wanted to make this thing, and I realized, okay, how do I do this? And then I learned that, okay, I have to get some recording software to do this, and it became just like it's just a means to an end. It started off as a means to an end, and I was like, okay, I have to learn this to be able to make the thing I want to do. So it's inevitable that I'm going to learn this so I can make the thing that I want to do. And that worked for me. And maybe it was just lucky because of the specific software I chose that worked out for me. But I don't know, it doesn't have to be a chore. Like learning how to use this like GarageBand doesn't have to be a chore. Like I think if you approach it like that, it can be a chore. Like if you say to yourself, I gotta learn Pro Tools, I gotta learn GarageBand. Like, no, you get to learn Pro Tools. Like that's great. That's fun. You get to learn how a piece of software works, and it helps you, turn this idea you've had into a reality. And like that's a fun thing. Like to me it is, and I don't know. And if it's not fun to you, then maybe you're just not that kind of person. Maybe a different method of creating works better for you. And this is where knowing yourself and knowing your own tendencies is also super important. Because you'll know if like you fit that kind of mold or not. But yeah, it doesn't have to be drudgery. It can be fun. You can enjoy it.
Yeah, no, it can be, well, for me at least, sometimes I can be a bit like banging on the keyboard, a bit annoyed at it. But it is, I think I'm learning to just fiddle around with it and see how it goes. But
yeah, just start with the fiddling part.
yeah,
Like just like you don't have to learn everything. Just learn enough to get by, and then over time you'll figure it out.
yeah, I think, well, when my dad was trying to help me learn, because he's kind of works in sound production, he was trying to teach me all about EQ, sort of when I was like 14, and he was getting really impatient. He was like, just drag it up and down and see what happens.
Yeah, just make it go woo,
yeah,
like you'll figure it out.
yeah, and we'd be like on the loudspeakers in the house, and like it'd be connected to a big, and it'd be like deafening, like awful sound.
Yeah.
My mum would be screaming in the kitchen.
What is that?
yeah, but it's love-hate relationship with technology.
That's so funny.
Yeah, but so I guess another thing is how do you find home recording? Do you find it sort of easy? Do you like having your own setup, or do you kind of sometimes wish that you had help from maybe others, or like mixers and people like that?
Sometimes I have experimented with working with some other people to help me mix my stuff in the past, and it hasn't really been that successful. And I'm not 100% sure why the reason is yet. I think part of it is me struggling to give up artistic creative control. Like I will admit that I am very particular about how I like want my things, and sometimes it's really hard for me to give that up. And I don't think you should always give it up, but I'm working on understanding when it is appropriate to do so, or when it might be useful to do so. But in general, I really like the home studio. And I think that's coming from a position of privilege and bias, because like I'm lucky enough to have a whole bunch of great stuff at home. Like, I have a whole bunch of microphones, the whole drum kit back there. There's a piano upstairs. Like, there's a lot of good stuff at home, and I am lucky to have all of it. And even though none of it is necessary, like you don't need any of this to get started, right? Like you don't need to get all this gear, and I know it can look like that. It can look really easy to say like, oh, I need to get all that stuff if I want to make anything. You don't. Like you can just get like Logic or something, or find some cheap free stuff on the internet and just do your own thing. But for me, it's like having the home space gives you so much opportunity to experiment with like all these different things you have. Like with recording drums, the drums are pretty hard or can be challenging to record, because there's like so many different elements and so many different microphones, and it's pretty intimidating to people. And like, how do you get good at something? Well, you practice and do it over and over again. The problem is that if the only time you ever record drums is when you're going into a studio to record, then you probably don't get that many opportunities to practice, right? But if you've got a drum set at home and the microphones to do it, then every time you're recording drums, which for me is like probably once a week or once every 2 weeks, then that's a practice time. That's just a practice time of like setting this stuff up and learning from your gives you more time to learn from your iterative things. Same thing for me with learning to mic saxophone, learning to mic piano, like doing all that stuff. It was all trial and error. Like I had a period of like 3 to 4 years where I was constantly unhappy with how my saxophone sounded with a microphone. And I was like, oh my God, this doesn't sound like the recording. And I realized that it was because I didn't sound like Michael Brecker, that was part of it. And other things were just like I wasn't quite using the right placement or using the right kind of microphone. And eventually I figured it out. And then, at some point I also just became okay with the sound I was getting. I was happy with it, because I realized I would never sound exactly like somebody else, but I could sound, pretty close and also have my own unique sound. So home recording is nice. I don't know if my neighbors like me, but I don't. Yeah, we don't have to talk about that part.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I mean, Aisha, are we good to go to some questions from the people? The people, yeah, that sounded a bit strange, but okay.
The people.
Definitely.
Oh, I recognize some of these names. Oh, hello.
I've been encouraging participants to post them to Q&A. So Safi and Carlos, if there's any questions that pop to you that seem natural to progress on, please feel free to pick them up.
Oh, sure. Okay, so let me open this window. Okay, how about this from the very beginning, from anonymous attendee. Hello, Mr. Attendee, comma anonymous. What advice would you give to someone who gets really nervous when recording? Safi, do you have that? Like, do you feel that ever? Do you get nervous when you're recording yourself at all?
I think yes and no, like nowhere near sort of doing a live thing. And I think just the comfort of, I guess the comfort of knowing that you can try again. And it's not, I mean, unless you're working to a sort of really strict time limit, I think just knowing that I'm able to keep going and kind of, you know, if I don't like it, try again. I think, so I would say I don't get nervous necessarily when I'm recording myself. And that's partly why I like doing it so much, because it's just a chance for all your ideas to really come through, but without a lot of pressure and a lot of, yeah.
Right. So you're saying that you think you get more nervous live than you do in a recording setting?
Because I think it's just that idea of hanging on to, oh God, if I mess up. I think when you home record, you know, you're like, oh, I've got that kind of a bit of leeway to sort of mess up, and all those takes that, you know, like take 17 that I don't talk about. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that's you have all these takes, right? And that's something that I think is important to keep in mind when you're recording, is that, you know, like, I guess if you're recording, I get it if you're recording in a live situation. That's probably the most stressful one possible, because it's getting recorded and you've got one shot, right? That's hard. But if you're just recording at home, like, you know, just know you have a bunch of takes, like, you'll be okay. Now, my guess is that for this person who is nervous about recording, you might be less nervous about the actual recording and more nervous about releasing your recording. Because that's like, you know, that's like committing and publishing something, which is the same stress that comes with playing live. And all I can say to that is to go back to the other point I made about all you can do is focus on the one step ahead of you, right? It's not going to be perfect your first time. It's not going to be perfect your 1000th time. You know, I don't make any perfect things. Nothing looks, even though things that other people put out may seem perfect to you, to the person who made it, it's definitely not perfect. And it never will be. And that's the beautiful thing. So, you know, just do the best you can with what you have, and then put it out and then move on. Like, that's it. That's all you have to do. That's like, oh, you would like to answer this question live. Okay. Well, we answered that question. All right. Let's take a look from maybe from a recent one. Oh, okay. Benjamin Crow. Hello. Says, I was wondering what your process is when learning a new instrument. Do you get help or just figure it out by yourself? And how much do you usually practice your non-main instruments? This is a good question. So Safi, you play tenor saxophone, soprano saxophone, clarinet?
Yeah.
And what else?
Piano, bit of guitar, very embarrassing amount. So and I sing, but I don't practice that unless it's in the shower, really. So yeah.
The shower's the best place to practice.
Yeah. But
it's a shame you can't practice the saxophone in the shower, though.
Yeah.
But the reason I asked is because, I mean, like, I think it's almost natural to learn different instruments, I think. Like, you don't have to be professional level at any of them, or at any or all of them. It's just like, you know, it's just fun. Like, for me, it's just fun, and it's just a different way to express yourself. And I don't know, maybe this applies to just me, but I've never really been like a hardcore practicer.
Me, I can't say I am either.
Okay. That's very validating to hear. Thank you. And I think there's some merit to that, in that just like I was saying earlier about about like forcing yourself to learn Pro Tools or learning GarageBand, like, you can only force yourself to do so much. At a certain point, you have to have some sort of intrinsic motivation for this, because getting good at anything requires you going through so many reps and so much time, and it honestly just it's a drag after a while. And I think one of the only ways to sustain yourself is to have enough of a fire inside of you, or intrinsic love for it, that pushes you through all of that. And that's how I feel about instruments, is that just I like learning them so much, and I like figuring them out. And above all, the most important thing is to just spend time with it. And just play it. Don't even practice it. Just play it a bunch. Yeah. And just figure out how it works. Getting lessons, can help, right? But isn't necessary. I've taken a couple, I took some trumpet lessons for a little while. I took some double bass lessons just for a little while. And by a little while, I mean maybe a couple months, just to learn the fundamentals and basics to make sure I wasn't doing anything wrong. But apart from that, I think listening and having an idea of what good is on an instrument is really important. Having a concept of the sound you want in your head is useful for that. Just have fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the persevering thing, and kind of getting on with it yourself, can be really good, because I mean, for me, that's my thing, I guess. Recently it's been trying to pick up the flute in lockdown, and playing it for the first time, being a reed player, I was nearly on the floor fainting. I was it's my head hurts. I was I can't do this, but then, but you kind of persevere with it, and I think it really helps having that kind of independence, being able to use yourself as a player, even if it's not professional. But when you're doing things like home projects and sort of self-recording, I think when you have an idea and kind of timbrely what you want it to sound like, and you think, instead of kind of compromising and think, okay, I'll put it on this, you can really give it a go. And for some of my stuff, I've even kind of thought, okay, I'll give it a go on the flute. I mean, it might not be very good, and then I've ended up sort of using it in a final take for something. And I think it just really helps you when you can vision something, because you say, kind of short-term ideas, when you can kind of vision it in your head, and then you can just get it out or try it as soon as possible yourself. I think that's really important and good for the creative process, I would say.
Look at you you now you're the one giving the expert advice. There you go. and the best part is it doesn't matter, because it's all you can share is your experience.
Yeah, subjective experience.
There you go. There you go. Let's pick there was another one. From Nick Riconosciuto. I'm trying. I was trying that one. Where do I start? I told myself I would work on music production and music composition and production this summer, but every time I sit myself down for the purpose of making music, I don't know what to do. This has continued for months, and I keep cycling through, wow, Carlos' music is great. I wish I could do this too. Oh wait, I have the tools to do that. How did you actually get my name right? I've consumed pasta before. I've spent some time with some Italians, so I think that's Italian. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Anyway, where did it go? Where did the question go? Did it move somewhere? Oh, it's at the top. Okay, there it is. Okay, so the interesting thing that struck me here is you said, I told myself I would work on music composition and production this summer. So why did you tell yourself that? Obviously you're not I can't get, this is more of a rhetorical question, but why did you have to tell yourself that? If you really wanted to do it, why did you have to tell yourself? That's what I think. There are times when I've said, you know what, I'm going to study Japanese. I've told myself I'm going to study Japanese. And you know what happens every time? I don't study Japanese. So I think that the problem here seems more like a why am I doing this problem? Because if you're stuck in the same loop, it's there's a problem here. And I think your problem might be and this might be applicable to others, is that instead of forcing yourself to do something, create a situation for yourself where you have to, where it is inevitable. For example, my situation was, I'm going to make covers on YouTube every week. I don't know if they're going to be great. They might suck, but I'm just going to make them. And that the accountability that comes with posting them publicly is a good way to keep yourself doing it. This is like also with people who are like trying to lose weight. You know, if you tell yourself, you know what, I'm going to lose some weight, I'm just going to do it. It never works. It never, ever works. I mean, almost never. I think that you need some sort of accountability other than yourself, right? Because you are a very smart person. Everybody is a very smart person. And in fact, you're so smart that you often outsmart yourself, right? Like if I tell myself I'm guilty of this, you know what? I'm not going to have that third bowl of cereal after dinner tonight. Like, you know what? I'm just not going to do it. And you know what happens? I tell myself, you know, it's okay. You deserve it. You can have that cereal. So the strategy is to create an accountability system or something that outside of yourself that makes it real, like a deadline that somebody else is holding you to. Maybe it's a group of people you're doing it with. You know, maybe for my situation, I should join a group of people, a group of people who are dedicated to not eating after dinner. You know, if that exists, then maybe I should join it. But
there will be a subreddit for that, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably like I don't know, like post dinner, no, I don't know, something like that. But that's what I would say is if you get a good why and you put yourself in a good situation, it works out. It can work out. You can become I don't know, you can make stuff and you'll be great. Your results not guaranteed. Yeah. I am so it looks like we are done at 6, right? Yeah. Okay. I'm wondering if when this is done, is the call going to close? Because I would like to be able to like type out the answers to this, even if we're done speaking. I don't know if when we close the Zoom call, if these Q&A questions disappear. I don't know how that works.
So they're all 1 hour. So what we could do is we could make a note of all the questions and perhaps get back to them in the best capacity we can decide.
Oh, you know, how would I do this? If you really want your question answered, just shoot me an email at carlos@insaneintherainmusic.com and I will respond to your question, because I would like to get to all of them, but I can't. But if you really want it, just send me an email, then I'll get back to it in due time. Let's try to do, I think we have like time for one more. Safi, do you have one that you want to look at? Do you have any particular one?
Let's have a look. There was one, I'm not being vain, but someone was asking me where to find my music, and I
Oh, yeah. I'm not being vain, but
I was like, let me not. Like, I'm not gonna say anything. I think it was Nathan who asked. I mean, and I guess that could go into a question in a minute that I have. But
Sure.
Yeah, my music's on Spotify and like Amazon, Apple, like all the ones that like DistroKid, the distribution service.
DistroKid.
Yeah, I know. And so I was gonna ask your opinion on that in a bit, but kind of when you're like a young home musician, you're kind of like, I want to get this stuff out, but you have no representation. So I have my stuff out, and I use DistroKid. My artist name is Safi Jazz, if you want to check it out. And I'm also in a duo called Cloud 119, so you can also check that out. Yeah, so it's not that much on there yet, but I'm trying to work on it. And I did also say that this summer I told myself this summer that I would do a lot. I know. Yeah, you can tell that a week into my school holidays, and that's already, yeah.
Okay, let me let's just do a last quick one. Okay, how this is useful. Do you have perfect pitch or very good relative pitch? If you do, does it help, hinder, or affect your workflow in any way? So a lot of people think I have perfect pitch, but I don't. I'm pretty sure I don't. Because like it's not at all a required skill. You can like, I think my ear came from transcribing video game songs for like as many years as I have, you know. It's one of those things where you can practice and you will get good at it if you do it enough times, but you better be prepared for how many times it will take you to get that good at it. So it's I don't have it, not required. But you can get, like, if you practice enough, you can your sense of pitch can get just as good, if not potentially better, with an asterisk, than somebody with perfect pitch. Because in the process of learning what I've heard called true pitch, or like good pitch memory, because I don't use, like, there's a dichotomy between perfect pitch and relative pitch, which I think is false. You don't have one or the other. Like, I don't ever use relative pitch, almost never. I mean, very, very rarely do I, like, think about it. It's not like when I hear like A, do I think of, oh, I remember what F sounds like, and that's a major third up, so there's A. Like, I think that's just something that that has been institutionalized in, like, jazz and classical education, that makes you think that, oh, it's either perfect pitch or relative pitch. You have one or the other. That's not true. Is like, as we've realized with many things in 2020, in 21st century, there's a whole spectrum. there's a whole spectrum of pitch perception. So the important thing is just practice it. And by doing that, I mean, don't tell yourself you're going to practice it. Put yourself in a situation where you have to practice it. So there you go. And I think that's all the time that we have.
Yeah, annoyingly, I know. I feel like we could chat for hours, but
oh yeah.
no, I just no, but thank you everyone for your questions, and sort of just for being really, really into it. Really nice audience and everything. So yeah, thank you. I think we'll be sending a little kind of questionnaire thing about how you found it. So we'll contact you soon about that. So just keep an eye out. But yeah, so completing that, giving us as much feedback and information as possible. And yeah, so if you'd like to find out more about Sound of Music events, things like this, courses, all of that, you can go to www.soundofmusic.org. Just check out their stuff. It's really, really great. Wait, gosh, what am I saying? It's the heat. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us, and hope you enjoyed, and hope you have a lovely rest of the day. So thanks,
Thank you, everybody.
And thank
Also,
you, Carlos, most importantly.
Yeah, and if you have a question, like, please email me at that address. Like, if you really want your question answered, I'd be happy to. I can't guarantee.
Sorry, Carlos.
I can't guarantee I'll get back to you quickly, but I'll get back to you eventually.
Just before everyone leaves, I just want to thank Safi and Carlos, but also there's a poll that we would like to run. So if you have a second to just let us know how you found this session, the poll should appear on your screen. I think, Temi, are we good to share the poll? Check out poll. And if not, maybe just a quick plug in that this recording will be updated. Oh, amazing. Here you are. We would really appreciate if you could let us know how you found today's event, 10 being great and 1 being not so great.
Oh, can I answer this? Do I have to rate my own speaking on 1 through 10? I'm giving myself a 9.
Oh, unfortunately, host and panel.
Oh no.
But just to say big thanks to Safi and Carlos from me, and there will be more new music labs coming this week every day for the rest of the week, 12 to 1. So you can find out more information about that on our website. Also, we'll be uploading this recording, the brilliant conversation between Safi and Carlos, and also the amazing participants' questions, to our primary platform. So keep an eye out there, and we will try to gather all the questions and answers kindly provided by Carlos and send out as a follow-up email with the survey. I think this is all in terms of exit housekeeping from me. Yeah, I think, is there anything else that we are missing?
Don't forget to practice. That's it.
Nobody's leaving. I guess we can.
I think you've got to end it for some month. They don't want to. They're like a crowd of fans at a concert. You have to end the show.
Yeah, leave them out of their misery. They don't want to hear the awkward Zoom silence where everyone's smiling whilst pressing leave meeting and like that.
Okay, if I click, it's going to turn into an awkward Zoom meeting. If I hit leave meeting, I think that will
I think we're
Maybe
just looking into ending the webinar. So I think we could perhaps stay for a quick checkout amongst the panelists. But I'm just making
Oh
sure
yeah.
we can end the webinar option. So I'm just
Yeah,
checking.
let's do that.
So yeah, I think it's going ahead. I just touched base with Temi. So he'll be sorry, participants, to leave you out. We will get back to you with answers.